public. Welcome to tonight's ordinary meeting of the Shire Council this 10th of March 2026. Can we start by giving Eden another big round of applause? Thank you so much, Eden. That was a wonderful performance. You have a very big voice for a young lady, so well done and thank you. And as I always say to all our singers, you sing much better than everyone in this room, including myself, so thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you again here in the chambers. Thank you. Welcome to this ordinary meeting of Council. This public meeting is required to be live streamed on Council's website, and a person's image and or voice may be broadcast. This is outlined in Council's adopted code of meeting practice available on Council's website. Attendance at this meeting is to be taken as consent by a person to their image and or voice being live streamed. If any person attending this meeting, including members of the public, do not agree to being live streamed, you can choose to leave the meeting before the meeting starts. Council accepts no liability for any damage that may result from defamatory comments made by person attending meetings, and all liability will rest with the individual who made the comments. The recording will be published and made available on the Council's website for the balance of this Council term or 12 months, whichever is the longer period. In addition, the recording will be retained as a Council record. Members of the public are afforded the privilege of attending this meeting to witness the Council making its decision. Individuals acting in a disorderly manner can be asked to leave the meeting. Members of the public must remain silent, must not bring flags, signs or protest material, and must not disrupt the meeting. As we get underway, can everyone please place your mobile phones on silent? A person must not live stream or use an audio recorder, video camera, mobile phone or any other device to make a recording or photograph these proceedings unless you have prior authorisation of the Council. Before I begin the meeting, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet today, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and as I'm accustomed to doing so, I'd also like to acknowledge our veterans and all those who have and who are currently serving our great nation. Tonight's prayer will be given by Aaron Williamson of Dayspring Church, Castle Hill.
Well, Mayor, councillors, staff and members of the public, thank you first for the privilege of sharing tonight, and I want to begin by thanking you for the way you all serve and lead our community. I know I speak for all of Dayspring Church just when I say that we are very grateful for all you do. I wonder if this has become a regular occurrence in your house like it has mine. A family member insists that you watch a video that they've found or a photo, some kind of reel online that they've become very excited about. And you inevitably have to point out that this is actually fake. This is not real, this is AI. And so research shows that while nearly 90% of Australians think they can spot fake media, less than half of us get it right. Experts are saying we are now crossing a synthetic reality threshold. We aren't just dealing with fake news anymore, we are now entering into what's being called fake reality. In fact, it's gotten so bad so quickly that misinformation and disinformation is now ranked by the World Economic Forum as number 4 on the list of our world's top risks. Discerning what is true feels increasingly difficult, it's exhausting, and it's creating an underlying storm of anxiety in our culture. There's a story in the Gospels of where Jesus and his disciples are in a boat crossing a lake. A massive storm hits, the disciples panic, fearing for their lives, but Jesus is asleep. When they wake him in sheer terror, he simply speaks peace over the storm, bringing immediate calm. One of the things that stands out in the life of Jesus is that he always seems to be governed by a different, deeper reality. He didn't get caught up in the religious, cultural, or political storms around him. Rather, in every situation, he remained a non-anxious presence. As it becomes harder to tell what is true in our modern world, that kind of grounding now becomes essential. When we suffer from a crisis of reality, the life of Jesus and the truth he embodies offers us a guiding light in the midst of all the noise. He provides an anchor of peace to hold on to. Let us pray. Father, in a world that feels often loud, confusing, and anxious, we thank you that you offer us a steadfast anchor of truth. Lord, I pray tonight for the mayor, the councillors, the staff here tonight. And as they navigate the complexities and storms of civic leadership, I ask that you would grant them a deep, non-anxious peace. Give them clear minds to discern what is true as they lead with hearts that are gentle and humble. We pray your continued blessing over the Hills Shire, over every family, resident and business. And may tonight's meeting be guided by your wisdom and clarity. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for leading us in prayer, and thank you for your message. I think it's always an important reminder that we all need peace over the storms that are occurring right across the globe. So thank you for that reminder. Thank you for your service to our community as well. We do truly appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you again. We move to item 1, confirmation of the minutes, ordinary meeting of council, 24th of February 2026. Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Uno. Is there any debate? No debate. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Those against, those minutes are carried. Councillors, are there any apologies this evening? Yes, Councillor Jodie?
And Councillor Rosemary Boneham, please.
Apologies be accepted. Do I have a seconder? Is there any debate? No debate. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye.
Thank you.
Against, thank you. Those apologies accepted. And a leave of absence is granted to Councillors Bonham and Councillor Damasi. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest this evening? No declarations of interest. We move to Mayoral Minute number 6/2026, celebrating 120 years of the Hills Shire Council. Councillors, this month makes a remarkable milestone for our community, 120 years of local government in the Hills. The story of the Hills begins long before local government was established, starting with our First Nations people, followed by the early settlers. In 1804, the area became part of one of the earliest chapters of Australian colonial history, with the Castle Hill Convict Rebellion, often referred to as the Vinegar Hill Uprising. Convicts worked on government farms in the district, rose up in protest, making Castle Hill one of the earliest historic sites in the region. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Hills had developed a strong agricultural identity. For decades, it was known as Sydney's Orchard District, with communities such as Dural, Glenorrhea and Galston producing citrus and stone fruit that supplied markets throughout Sydney. It's almost impossible to imagine today, but when local government first established here in 1906, the Hills looked very, very different. Long before shopping centres, business parks and the metro, the district was a patchwork of orchards, farms and small rural villages. Dirt roads wound through the countryside and horse-drawn carts carried fresh produce from local farms to markets across Sydney. In 1906, a group of local landowners, farmers and community leaders gathered to form what was then known as the Baulkham Hills Shire Council. Their task was simple but significant: to provide local leadership and basic services for a growing rural community. The first council meeting was held in June 1906 at the home of Matthew Pearce on Windsor Road in Baulkham Hills, because the new council did not yet have its own chambers. In those early years, much of council's work focused on constructing roads, maintaining bridges and improving drainage so farmers could transport their produce to market. From 1924 until 1932, a branch railway line ran from Parramatta to Rogans Hill, serving local residents, orchard workers and small businesses. Known as the Rogans Hill Line, it provided vital transport for produce and passengers across the Shire, supporting the agricultural economy of the time. Although the line was eventually closed due to low patronage and competition from road transport, it remains an important part of the Hills transport heritage and laid the groundwork for future connections, including the Sydney Metro Northwest. The Hills community has also played its part in shaping Australia's national story. During both World War I and World War II, many local men and women left their homes, farms and families to serve their country. Their courage, dedication and sacrifice remain an important part of our history, remembered across the districts in memorials such as the Baulkham Hills Memorial Pool, now known as Waves, which stands as a lasting tribute to those who served, as well as other local commemorative sites and honour rolls. In addition to this, Waves Fitness and Aquatic Centre underwent a successful $55 million redevelopment by this council, reopening in September 2022 as a state-of-the-art year-round facility. This transformation preserves its legacy as a memorial site while providing modern aquatic and fitness amenities for our growing community. Over the past 120 years, the Hills has been guided by many dedicated leaders. Bruce Purser was the first Shire president in 1906, followed by early presidents including Joseph Peter Hopkins, Arthur Whitling, William B. Lawson and Charles Brown, who laid the foundations for local services and infrastructure. In the mid-20th century, leaders such as Arthur Telford Curry and Bernard Anthony Mullane oversaw post-war growth and suburban expansion. Later, with the introduction of the title of Mayor in the 90s, leaders including Peggy Womersley, John D. Griffiths, Professor Jeff Brooke Cowden and Sonia Phillips guided the Hills into its modern era, shaping the thriving community we know today. Over time, the Shire has gradually evolved. What began as rural villages slowly grew into thriving suburban communities. From the 1960s through to the 1980s, the Hills transitioned from an agricultural district into a growing suburban region, as families were drawn to the area's open space, community spirit and quality of life. As the community grew, so did the facilities of local government. Early council meetings shifted between rented halls and temporary spaces across the Shire until a purpose-built council chamber was established on Old Northern Road in Castle Hill, providing a central home for local governance. Later, as the Shire expanded, council moved to a larger facility on Showground Road, Castle Hill, which became the civic hub for many decades. With the development of the Sydney Metro Northwest and the acquisition of the Showground site for the transport infrastructure, council eventually relocated to a modern facility in the Norwest Business Park. Today's council chambers and administration building here at 3 Columbia Court Norwest provide modern offices, meeting rooms and community spaces where local decisions continue to be made. In 2006, to celebrate 100 years of local government in the Hills, a time capsule was created and sealed. This capsule contains reflections, objects and stories from the community and is scheduled to be opened in 2056 to mark 150 years of council. The Hills' rich history is preserved and celebrated in places such as Wiseman Ferry and Bella Vista Farm, one of the oldest surviving farms in the region, which showcases the orchards, buildings and farm life that shaped the district. A special part of our community story is Fred Catterson Reserve in Castle Hill. Interesting, the reserve was initially intended to serve as a town centre, but over time the town centre naturally developed along the ridgeline on Old Northern Road instead. Instead, Fred Catterson was gazetted for public recreation and has since become a hub for sport, community events and outdoor activities, reflecting the foresight of local leaders in planning for the long-term needs of the Hills. In 2008, Baulkham Hills Shire officially became the Hills Shire Council, reflecting the identity residents had long embraced and the unique character of the district. More recently, transformative infrastructure such as the Sydney Metro Northwest, which opened in 2019, has connected Hills to the wider Sydney rail network for the first time, shaping a new chapter of growth and opportunity for the region. The strength of the Hills community has always been its people, and our volunteers are at the heart of that spirit. For 120 years, residents have generously given their time, energy and skills to support local schools, sporting clubs, community organisations and events. Their dedication ensures that every corner of our community, from our parks and playgrounds to our cultural celebrations and emergency services, thrive. From a small rural shire to a thriving community of more than 200,000 residents, the story of the Hills is one of growth, resilience and strong community spirit. While the landscape has changed enormously since 1906, the purpose of local government has remained the same: to serve the community and plan for the future. As Mayor, I'm incredibly proud to be a part of this long story of local leadership and community service. I'd like to thank the many councillors, staff, volunteers and residents who have helped shape the Hills over the past 120 years. Our history is something to celebrate and our future is something to be excited about. Here's to the next chapter of the Hills. Accordingly, I move that this mayoral minute be received. Councillor Uno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and such a historic, well-written mayoral minute. And it's great, you know, as you were reading that, Madam Mayor, it just really reflected on all those names that we hear, that we take for granted, the sporting fields that are named in their honour, and to see such a rich history and dedication and legacy that they have left for our Shire, Madam Mayor. But this mayoral minute gives us an opportunity to reflect on 120 years of local government, Madam Mayor, in the Hills, and the remarkable community that has grown here over that time. For many of us in the chamber, the story of the Hills is not just something that we read about, it's something that we have lived. From my own personal experience, Madam Mayor, growing up here, when I saw this in first hand when I moved to the Hills when I was six years old, Madam Mayor. attending Our Lady of Lourdes Primary School, and then calling this place my home. From those early years, Madam Mayor, I saw firsthand what makes the Hills special: a strong sense of community, people looking out for one another, and pride in the place that we call home. Over the past 120 years, the Hills has grown from a rural district of orchards and farms to one of the most vibrant communities in New South Wales. Generations of residents have helped build that success through hard work, service, and community spirit. But as we reflect on that history, it is also important that we remember those whose service has helped secure the freedoms that we enjoy today, Madam Mayor. Beginning of every council meeting, you, Madam Mayor, acknowledge the service and sacrifice of our veterans, and I thank you for that. It is a simple but powerful reminder that the freedoms that we enjoy in the communities like ours were defended by men and women who were prepared to serve our nation. Many of those service men and women came from the communities just like the Hills. They left their homes, their families, and their livelihoods to defend the values and freedoms that allow communities like ours to prosper today. As we celebrate 120 years of local government in the Hills, it is only fitting that we recognise that our prosperity and stability and our freedoms we enjoy today is secured through their service and sacrifice. Madam Mayor, and on that light, I would like to move an amendment to your mayoral minute. It could be eventually brought up on screen. Thank you. So I think it's with the lead up to Anzac Day on the 25th of April, can the council and its social and other media communication channels inform the community about the significance of the last post and it being a sacred ceremonial call reserved for commemorating the service and sacrifice of Australian men and women who have died in war, that it should never, ever be used in local policy protest, that anyone doing so risks diminishing its honoured and solemn meaning that may cause distress amongst veterans, their families, and the broader service community.
Thank you. So you'd like to include that as point 2 on my mayoral minute?
Yes, please, Madam
That's
Mayor.
fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, as their legacy is a peaceful and thriving community that we are privileged to represent. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jody.
Madam Mayor, this is such a beautiful recognition of our council, Hills Shire Council, the pride, and we are so proud to be a part of it, contributing to this wonderful place, wonderful Shire, and wonderful residents today. But yes, this mayoral minute is a reminder of what a small and a slow start it would have been 120 years back. Having seen the Matthew Pearce Primary School grow from small couple of sheds, couple of demountables to the size and the pride of the nation it is as a primary school. The schools that we have in the Hills Shire, they have churned out umpteen number of students and adults grown into making us so proud, having achieved such heights, having achieved such success, having achieved the name itself. We are a role model for so many other councils. They follow us, they learn from us, and they are very grateful for that. Also on that note, Madam Mayor, we must say that today that we take so much pride in hosting everyone at this wonderful site as an office for the Hills Shire Council that houses hundreds of staff under our General Manager and you, Madam Mayor. It is amazing to also recognise that this has not happened overnight, but a very little step forward towards this fruition today. Madam Mayor, on that note, I would like to also remind that for this 120 years, the fight has been constant. And that fight, the good fight that we are fighting even today for our residents, for their benefit, for their future generations' benefit, and for our current residents. Simple fights like finding a new police station, the need for a new fire station. We don't have enough for the increasing population that you have been mentioning over and over and over again. So on one side, this mayoral minute reminds us of the time frame that we have covered, the distance we have covered, and how far we have come, but also a reminder that there is so much more to be done and so much more to fight for. And this is a good fight that we are doing as representatives of our residents. I also like to thank you for making that amendment in your mayoral minute, Madam Mayor, suggested and put forward by Councillor Uno. This also reminds us to the point that those who have given their lives, sacrificed their family time, their own lives, their families' times for our today and for our future, it should not go unnoticed. It is very important, and I like when you recognize the land and you pay your tribute at the beginning of every meeting. You remember the veterans and pay our respects, and that is very fitting. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and a very, very congratulatory and a celebratory mayoral minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jody. Any further speakers? Councillor Blue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and it's fantastic you were able to acknowledge this special occasion here in the Hills of 120 years of the Hills Shire Council. I'm going to start with a story that was told once by the Hills Historical Society, and that is of Councillor and Shire President Robert Lowe. Robert Lowe was the father of Harvey Lowe, and he resided in Lower Portland. Now, Lower Portland from Castle Hill is approximately 45 minutes drive, but back in 1914, when Robert Lowe was the Shire President, that was a long travel time because there weren't any cars. Robert Lowe used to leave his house in Lower Portland and he'd travel for a day and he'd get to Box Hill. At Box Hill, he'd stop at the Box Hill Inn and he'd stay there for the night and he'd continue on the next day. He'd have the council meeting, he'd turn around, he'd go back and he'd stop at Box Hill, and on the third day he'd travel home. And they did that once a month. So coming to a council meeting was a 3-day journey. It was like going away for a long weekend. How things have changed. The Battle of Vinegar Hill, Australia's largest and most significant major uprising of convicts, started here in the hills at Government Farm at Castle Hill, now Heritage Park, a significant event in the early colonisation of this country. We turn our mind to Bella Vista Farm, which in the 1890s was the largest orchard in the country, a very prosperous orchard. It was also the first property to breed merino sheep here in Australia. Madam Mayor, you've outlined a significant number of key parts of our history here in the Hills, and I think it is worth noting of just so how far we have come as a council and as a community in 120 years. We look at our early days of being an orchard and fruit-bearing shire, through now to being many things. We look at our early days of the train line through Rogan's Hill, which didn't last all that long. It was put in place to transport fruit from the northern parts of our shire through Castle Hill down to Parramatta and off to market. As I said, it didn't last very long. It was removed, and then many years and many decades later, the train comes back and it goes back in almost at the same line again. It's funny how history changes things. But Madam Mayor, thank you to bring this to the chamber. I think we should be very proud as a council what we've achieved as a community, and I look forward to the next 30 years and when the time capsule will be opened. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Any further speakers? Councillor Hazelden, you wish to speak? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, thank you for the mayoral minute, which really caused me to reflect the big picture. And here you are portraying the fact that a mere 120 years ago, in this region that we so happily inhabit today and where things work so incredibly well, there was very little. Going back more than 120 years, a couple of hundred years and more now, Madam Mayor, the land we again inhabit and enjoy today was once all bushland and scrubland, and now look where we are today. We're a burgeoning population of 200,000 people. Madam Mayor, I couldn't help but also reflect, thinking about the early history of the Shire, about the importance of preservation of heritage. And a number of times in recent years in this chamber, I've talked about what I think is the importance of protecting the old convict well at Heritage Park. And so I simply take the opportunity again, Madam Mayor, to reinforce the belief I have that we do something to properly preserve the convict heritage well, because it's an item which in the fullness of time, if we don't do anything, will simply disappear into the dust of the earth. Madam Mayor, I think I couldn't help but reflect also on the amendment that my colleague Councillor Uno has offered for consideration, which touched on the use of the last post in instances beyond recognising the importance which you've acknowledged of our veteran sacrifice. And I think the fact that Councillor Uno has had to raise this point publicly is testament to the fact that what we saw quite recently in protests over Fred Caterson Reserve development was nothing short of almost sacrilege, Madam Mayor. And I would conclude my comments again, Madam Mayor, by repeating what I said earlier, that all of us, as we continue to develop in this prosperous region and prosper, need to consider the fact that a mere 250 or slightly more years ago, Madam Mayor, the land that this council chamber is on now, the land that we all inhabit as residents, was once bushland and scrubland. And look where we are today in supporting an important part of the growth of this incredible global city that Sydney has become. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelden. Any further speakers? No further. Councillor Casby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for your mayoral minute. It's a really good history of our Shire.
A lot of history there, isn't there?
Yeah.
I couldn't get all on 2 pages.
Yeah. And look, I guess I wasn't going to speak, but I do feel like I have to defend our community and defend some of the views of some of the other veterans that I have spoken to. I'm not going to be so arrogant as to speak on behalf of all veterans, but in the words of one particular member of the Castle Hill RSL sub-branch, I'd just like to read out what he said. I have PTSD, anxiety and depression and physical injuries. Nature is my biggest therapy, and bushwalking is something I regularly do to find peace. I love birds in particular, and it concerns me the lack of consideration for the damage and the loss of habitat here and across the country. While the press over the weekend seemed fixated on the last post, it has been used in many other events around the world, including the relegation of my beloved Doncaster Rovers Football Club. The significance is known, but we as the military community don't own the rights to the music. I'm not offended, and if people are offended by a piece of music played respectfully by a community in grief, they need to realise that there are bigger issues here. I am offended by the actions of council, by destruction of this crucial habitat, and by ignoring the voices and the wishes of the community. So I do have a copy of the letter from the RSL sub-branch, and I do know that the veteran members of the local RSL sub-branch tell me, I've spoken to some of them, that in fact they aren't actually concerned at all. No one raised any objections or voiced any concerns at their meeting last night. So members who this letter is meant to represent tell me that they haven't seen it, they haven't read it, and I know that the branch didn't vote on it. The members telling me that there is no outrage. They understand the community's grief and they're actually offended by the actions of council. And I actually think that the veteran members of that sub-branch, if they knew, what was being surprised on us here at council, would be annoyed at being drawn into something that they shouldn't be. Having their letter weaponised against the community No one has sent me a complaint as an email. I have very little comments on my social media. The branch may have submitted a letter that this Merrill Minute was drawn from, or this amendment was drawn from, but the members tell me that they feel that this is to distract from the real concerns. So there's a number of things. This particular veteran is more concerned with the loss of 350 trees, nature and open public space to be used by the community. They feel that council is grasping at the only thing they have, and this is not mass outrage at the last post. So yes, this is sacred to Australians, but it has been used in many situations around the world. In this particular instance, this community was grieving and are still grieving. This was a deeply moving, poignant, heartfelt response by your community to the bringing down of beautiful trees, to the destruction of habitat and ecosystems. It was the end of the day, the last day for these trees and for this place as the community knows it. They feel that it was entirely appropriate. Some veterans and families of veterans, including myself, were there. So why are you criticising how they choose to mourn when it was clear from the video that there was no disrespect?
Thank you, Councillor Casby. Any further speakers?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cartwright.
I would also add, Madam Mayor, that the only feedback I have received from the Hills Shire community has been a fierce and unwavering opposition to the destruction and devastation of our last remaining bushland at Fred Catterson Reserve here in the Hills. So let me be very clear. I would never seek to offend our returned servicemen and women or the memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. The overwhelming majority of our community understands this issue for what it truly is, a serious environmental and wildlife, not to mention that it is adjacent to Castle Hill Cemetery, a concern that deserves respect, not political deflection and a poor attempt at political opportunism. Yet what the community is witnessing instead is your Liberal power broker, David Elliott, a former ousted minister in a pre-selection and from your own political faction, attempting to politicise this legitimate community issue in order to divert attention from what many in our community see as the disgraceful destruction of Fred Catterson Reserve. I also find it extraordinary, Madam Mayor, that you have publicly stated your intention to attempt to ignore the community on this matter, yet you now seek to bring it before Council this evening. And let us never forget the recent history here, when thousands of community petitions opposing the Fred Catterson Reserve development were presented to this council. Every Liberal councillor rejected them, with some even claiming they had not received a single complaint or concern, including the current sitting member for Castle Hill when he was on council. Many in this chamber will also recall the condescending remarks directed at members of the public sitting in this very gallery by some councillors during that debate. So tonight, Madam Mayor, I sincerely hope every councillor is both reading and listening to the overwhelming backlash from the community, a backlash that is entirely justified. For my part, I will continue to stand with our community and support them in opposing this devastating decision.
Thank you, Councillor Cartwright. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, to the substance of the mayoral minute, I think 120 years is a good long time for just about anybody. Any human gets anywhere near that, they're doing pretty well. And I think it's wonderful to reflect on the fact that people came here, there were some farms and things, but essentially it was undeveloped. And we built this amazing community, an amazing place that so many people from all over the world are desperate to come and live in, because it's one of the best places on earth, if not the best. So I'm very supportive of the mayoral minute as a whole. I am concerned with some of the commentary from councillors. I would point out a few things to some of them. Councillor Cartwright, the mayor didn't put the Anzac Day stuff in this. That was Councillor Uno, so it's probably incorrect to refer to you in that way. But I do thank Councillor Uno for the amendment. I too saw the videos. I was appalled. I'm appalled not because it's illegal to use the last post or someone doesn't have the rights. I just think it's inappropriate. That's for fallen soldiers, not trees. It just hit me as wildly inappropriate. I was also appalled by the protest in general that kept saying, we'll respect the court's decision, etc. And then the court said, no injunction, we're not stopping it, they can continue. And then the protesters still blocked the gate every day and wasted police resources making them move, even though they knew they had to move. Our limited police resources, it's actually quite concerning. Also, the average age of these protesters was a bit older than a lot of the ones you see, and I thought they would be a little bit more mature about it. And okay, day one, you made the police come and move you, you're surely not going to do it again, but no, they did. I am appalled as well by the disinformation that has been put out there, particularly by some of the councillors. As we all know, when we voted on funding that and going ahead with the tenders and things, I believe Councillor Casby at the time suggested that I hadn't read it properly and that there were 7-metre fences to block out the community, but upon questioning, it's actually 7-metre fences to stop balls going into the bushland, disturbing the bush that we're also concerned about. I also saw a speech given to the protest by Councillor Cartwright focusing on Eastwood Rugby, coming Eastwood Rugby, Eastwood Rugby, Eastwood Rugby, blah, blah, Eastwood Rugby, but Eastwood Rugby is not coming, and as Councillor Cartwright knows, there is no MOU, there is no licence. The thing we all voted on, and supported or not, this chamber voted on, was to build 3 community level fields that will be allocated to sports on a needs basis. This is not a rugby field. It could be, depending on needs, but it's not right now. And Eastwood Rugby has nothing to do with it. And they keep saying these things. And it's so funny to hear people at the same protest talk about campaigns of disinformation when it's all based on disinformation. The number of emails I've gotten from concerned community members that have, and then when I talk to them and explain, no, Eastwood Rugby's not coming, no, it's just sports fields, etc., people go, oh, I thought you were giving away the land to a private club, which is not what's happening. And even if Eastwood Rugby was involved, we're still not giving away the land to a private club under the previous MOU, so it just doesn't make any sense. But it was any stick that could beat this with. It was opposition to fields at all, then it became all about the rugby and the private thing. Now that's died off, it's about it again, or maybe it's too many fields, we should have one less. And the most appalling thing, before the last post at least, was people climbing on the graves of the dead next door and saying, actually, I'm actually really concerned about the mourners now, and that's why the field shouldn't be here. It's not because I oppose the fields in principle, it's because there's a graveyard next to it. In spite of the fact, if you look at, say, the North Rock Cemetery, Maze Hill Cemetery, and others, they're all near sporting fields. It's not an unnormal thing, and when people are grieving, they either don't notice the rest of the world because they are grieving, and if they do get a slight interruption from someone in their grieving, it's probably because they're moving on, and that's a good thing. I respect the service of the veteran that Councillor Casby spoke to, but again, they are not speaking. We have not ignored the community. The community has had this put before them at a state election, at a local election. They had third-party campaigners going around, which I've never seen at any election, going around explaining how this was the worst thing ever, and people had to oppose it, and these are the councils that aren't opposing it, and you shouldn't support them. And then we look at the result, and it didn't move the needle on the outcome of the election. The electorate has spoken, the community as a whole has spoken, and they voted in a majority on this council that were labelled as supporting this as an Eastwood Rugby development, not even what it is now, which is just for the community. To say I've not heard from people that this is about this in a negative way, a positive way at all, it shows that you're in a bubble. It doesn't show that you're right, and that's reflected in the election results. And I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Any further speakers? Councillor Gratzover?
Could I move an amendment, please, Madam Mayor?
Amendment.
The amendment would be to defer part 2 of this motion until we have community consultation about this and consultation in person with the Castle Hill RSL sub-branch and any veterans who would like to attend.
I don't think you can move a...
That's contrary to the previous amendment.
It doesn't work.
I can move a deferral amendment on top of this, and
That's
then you
only
can
if I
hear
accept it
that.
as the mover. I don't accept it as the mover of the motion.
Yeah, I know, but I can move an amendment on that to be heard on top of this first, and then if that is dismissed, then we go back to this amendment.
I don't think that's how it works. Yeah, I don't think you can't do it on a mayoral minute.
Could I foreshadow it, or could I ask?
There's no foreshadowing on a
Could I
mayoral minute.
ask that we vote on this in seriatim, because I think councillors, a procedural motion, because I think councillors need time to discuss this further and discuss this with our community, and further with veterans as well. I don't think council has the right, and councillors have the right, to make this decision on behalf of veterans and on behalf of our community.
I don't think anyone's trying to move anything on behalf of veterans. All we're saying is we want to make sure that everyone remembers the importance of Anzac Day and remembers the importance of the last post.
But you
No
are
one's
saying that
speaking on
it should
behalf
never
of
be
them.
used. You're saying that it should never be used in local policy protest. Well, but that's your opinion. There are plenty of people with an opposite opinion.
Okay.
I don't think councillors should be making this
Councillor Lou?
decision.
Councillor Casby, please be seated.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question through to you. Is it your intention that we educate the community on what the last post is? Do you see that the point 2 is educating the community on what the last post is, rather than trying to tie this to some particular group?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can I ask a question? It does say that it should never ever be used in local policy protest, and then it condemns anyone, that anyone doing so risks diminishing its honoured and solemn meaning, which may cause distress amongst veterans, their
I don't see
families
the word
and their broader.
condemn in there. Where do you get that from?
Because it's saying it never ever should be used. So it's basically banning it. So you can't ban it. A council can't decide to ban it without talking to the community and to veterans. So I think we need to defer this part 2 until we actually have some
Madam Mayor,
consultation
this isn't a
about
question,
that.
this is a debate.
It's not a debate. I've got mayoral minute that I've put up. I've accepted Councillor Uno's additional point to it. This is what we're voting on when we get to it. So either vote for it or vote against it. It's a matter for you.
Could I pass a procedural motion to ask that we vote in seriatim?
Is there a seconder to do that? Debate or just put it? We just put it. All those in favour of... No, I'm just putting it. All those in favour of doing it in seriatim, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Against. It's lost. Thank you. Councillor Uno, you got a question?
Just a question.
Yes.
There was talk during the actual debate around a letter from the RSL. Is it possible to make a question through to the Mr. Edgar around the actual content of that letter?
Through to Mr. Edgar.
Madam Mayor, through you, I'm not aware of the letter that Councillor Casby's got, but it might be the same letter that I've received from the President of the RSL, that it is not a letter of complaint against the council, but making the point that effectively it is for fallen, and it can cause concerns to veterans, their families and others in the wider community, much along the lines of what's said in...
Thank you.
Could I ask a question, please, through you,
Councillor
Madam
Casby.
Mayor, to the General Manager? Did you request that the Castle Hill sub-branch of the RSL write this letter and send it to Council?
That's an allegation.
That's pretty serious.
No, it's a question. It's just a question.
Madam Mayor, I'll answer it in the spirit that it was given. No, I did not.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Severage, you wish to speak? Councillor Grazieva, you wish to speak? Thank you. Councillor Grazieva, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I would congratulate you on the minutes, I have a question which everyone want to have answers with this Fred Catterson Reserve. So we're talking about will be community fields. Can we confirm that 100% it will be for community use only, for the local community use only. This is what we're talking about and talking again and again and again.
Point
Can
of
we
order, Madam
confirm
Mayor.
this?
Councillor, any point of order?
Relevance, Madam Mayor. That's actually not. That's not.
And we're not
relevant.
debating Fred Cat and the allocation of the
Correct.
fields of Fred Caddis and all the licence agreement, whether or not there will be one in the future.
Yeah.
Just
So-
to clarify, we're building 3 community fields. The allocation is yet to be determined. That will be a decision of this council when we get to that point.
Yep, thank you very much. So I would like to congratulate you with the minute, Madam Mayor. Very long history of achievement in the Hillshire Council, and we have a lot, anticipate a lot, and I would say that as we all working towards for infrastructure delivery and making our Shire more beautiful, more accessible and more livable for our community. This is, I've been pointed in a discussion about new fire station and about emergency facility. So it's currently under state government radar and under the planning process for fire station in a Box Hill, and talking about the land dedication for new state emergency services facility to service broader Kellyville and Bella Vista area. Good motion. I also be proud to be part of this history and congratulates everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Eva. Thank you very much. Councillor Jackson, you're the last speaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure how we got 120 years and then ended up just talking about one particular item, but I'd like to, be able to reflect on all of it. The first part, we had a recognition of Michael Spence that spent quite a bit of time serving our community. I think, was it 30 years or something on council? And we also got to reflect on the service of the General Manager, who's, I think, was nearly about the time of this 120 years, or close enough. As much as 120 years is a very long time, we still have a number of staff that have recently left still here that have contributed significantly to the outcomes that we're seeing in that 120 years. I was doing a bit of research about the first kind of council chambers, if that's what you can call it, in 1908. The local newspaper talked about this little house that they had where they would meet in kind of the front room, but then the Shire, I think its secretary, would run operations with just a couple of people out the back, and they called it a little wooden shanty. And I think we've progressed quite significantly to the beautiful chambers that we have at the moment from a little wooden shanty. I also was reflecting on, in 1911, they had 3,000 residents in the Hill Shire, and to progress to the point that we are at the moment with over, 200,000 residents, and that number increasing dramatically with the growth. I think every generation of councillors, people that have been on this council have recognised the growth that's necessary for the areas. No doubt there's been many debates about many different things and many different opinions about how the Shire should grow. But one thing that has been guaranteed across this entire time is it's going to grow whether we like it or not. I was at Bella Vista, my Bella Vista house 14 years, and I was sitting in the house was built in the early 70s, and I was sitting in the study looking down at the driveway, and I had a gentleman walking up the driveway that I'd never seen before. And I decided to go down and find out whether he was lost. And immediately when he spoke, he had an American accent. And I asked him about why he was here and what was happening. And he said that he sat in my house in the 70s looking out the window and my place in Bella Vista, it would have had Seven Hills Road behind him and then looking out towards kind of Norwest Boulevard to where we are at the moment. And he said at the time, he was an exchange student going to school in Granville, I think it was, and that he could only see 2 other houses from that window. So to imagine, through that growth from what we've talked about in 1908, 1911, that the Shire has changed dramatically. Many of the places that we even live on at the moment used to be trees, used to be orchards, used to be a whole bunch of different things that different people within the community had very strong or not as strong opinions about what that growth looked like. And clearly tonight we have people with varying opinions of what growth looks like as well. I'm a supporter of growth, Madam Mayor. I understand that it's a necessity, just like many have stood on council before me, but do know that as they did, held a very strong responsibility to what that growth looks like, but also at the same time that as we all sit here, we reflect on the difficult decisions that we have to make about that growth. There's many developments that have come through on the hills that other councillors have supported that I haven't been so keen on, especially the significant amount of towers or heights that have been proposed for developments, including out at Bella Vista and Kellyville Station. We do, however, have to make difficult decisions, and we are meant to act on behalf of the entire community. And in many cases, when there's division, the majority of the community, rather than necessarily either smaller or louder groups or ones that we are politically affiliated with. We swore an oath and we have a responsibility to be able to make these decisions. I'm proud to be able to stand here, as I'm sure many other councillors are, to have the opportunity to contribute to these decisions and to make these decisions. And I know that they're not perfect, but I think when many people look at the Shire Council at the moment, many of them want to be part of our council, many of them are jealous of our council, many of them are jealous of our general manager and the staff that we have here supporting us because of the great work that has been done, I think within reason, to be able to support the growth that's necessary for our community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. I'll put the mayor on minute. All those in favour say aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you, councillors. Got 2 call for a division. Thank you. You be seated, and councillor, if you can vote on your keypads, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All votes are in.
All votes are in. That motion is carried, but for the tape recording proceedings, I will read out the names of councillors who voted for and against. So voting for the motion is Councillor Blue, Councillor Cox, Councillor Gratsiva, Councillor Hazelden, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Jetty, Councillor Severage, Councillor Uno, and myself, Mayor Dr. Byrne. The voting against that motion is Councillor Cartwright and Councillor Casby. Thank you. Motions are carried. We now move to planning matters. Item 2 is defined as a planning matter pursuant to the Local Government and Planning Legislation Amendment Political Relations Act 2008. New South Wales Government Exhibition, a new approach to strategic planning discussion paper, statewide policy for industrial lands and draft Sydney plan. Councillor Blue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the motion as per the recommendation
Moving
of the business
recommendations
paper.
put in the business paper. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Uno. Councillor Blue, you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Planning to have a plan is not a plan. Madam Mayor, I'm very concerned at these draft papers that have been put to us for consultation. And I say that in the spirit of trying to see a positive in this. And I appreciate that we don't currently have any plan for Sydney, and this is an attempt to try and remedy that issue. But I don't see this as a positive step forward. I see the new approach to a strategic planning discussion paper, the statewide policy for industrial land use and a draft Sydney plan, as being somewhat a step backward. And I say that for a number of reasons. In 2018, the Greater Cities Commission was established. And with that, it created a plan for Sydney, for Greater Sydney. It it created a metropolis of 3 cities where most residents would live within 30 minutes of a job, education, health facility, services, and great places to be. That was abolished in 2023 on the change of government. It was due for review, it was due for revitalisation, and it would have impacted some of the plans that we had as council, which we would have needed to review and move forward. But it was abolished, and for a number of years we've run without a plan. The framework put forward here is awfully vague. And I turn councillors to page 20 and I'll quote. It identifies that the current framework is fragmented and duplicative, making timely and effective implementation difficult. In contrast, the proposed new framework is intended to reduce duplication, speed up rezonings and provide greater certainty for infrastructure delivery and housing supply. So that's a positive. But the way this has been put forward in these plans does not do that. It creates such a vagueness that it allows the authorities such as the HDA to come in on top of what the government are trying to put forward here and create what they'd like to do. It gives them a mechanism to do so. But Madam Mayor, when you have an agency or an authority such as the HDA's put in place to not follow any sort of strategic plan, be it state or local government, I see that as an opportunity for bad planning. I see that as a way we're going backwards, and I see that this plan does not provide. You may as well not have a plan if you're going to allow the HDA to come in on top and just throw out what you've got. Madam Mayor, we've seen that happen in here in the Hills, and I'll refer to Norwest. Almost to the day where in this chamber, we approved the Norwest Precinct Plan, the following day the government came out with its Todd proposal. We then see the HDA coming on top of that. Our strategic plans mean very little now. What has taken many years for this council to put together, looking at what infrastructure would be required, funding mechanisms for that, what could be sustained by population, what transport, thrown away. We see our precincts such as Norwest Business Park, which has been earmarked for jobs and employment with a small amount of residential, almost flip on its head to become what is going to be, or what is headed to in the direction of, a significant residential area. What is positive in this is that our rural lands are intended to be protected, and I will always stand for that. Most of the precincts that the HDA sites have already been subject to extensive master planning by both council and the state government. These areas have been carefully planned for many years to establish controls that will facilitate an appropriate urban design outcome and yields that can be supported with both local and regional infrastructure. Madam Mayor, I don't see that the infrastructure is going to be here for these houses, and I turn to page 26. It sets the hierarchy of priorities. Madam Mayor, I think a number of these should be prioritised equally across the board. I don't think any should take precedence over another, and I am most concerned that the least priority out of the seven, is being coordinated. I think coordination should be the beginning. You can't create communities by just rezoning your way out of a housing crisis. You can't create communities by dumping a heap of people in tall buildings and saying, hope for the best, find something to do over a weekend, find a way to transport and good luck with it. Madam Mayor, this needs to be a coordinated framework moving forward, and I urge the government to really put their mind to what it is that they want Sydney to be in the next period of time. Because, Madam Mayor, I don't see that in this plan, and I'm concerned that if this is the way the government want to head, we're not going back forward, we're going backward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blue. Councillor Severaj.
Let me start by thanking the General Manager and the staff on a very effective submission. I have read the attachments 4, 5 and 6. I particularly take note of page 198 and the response to the draft Sydney plan. I am concerned about the fact that the Sydney plan appears to prioritise, as we have outlined, securing housing supply at the expense of protecting and supporting employment outcomes. Now on page 200, I note that the Council's strategic centres, as part of the Sydney plan, is heavily geared towards residential outcomes, and this weightage is shifting even further with the development of HDA and so on. Now we all know that the state government is responding to the housing supply shortage. Now, I have listened to what Councillor Blue stated. Now, I believe the state government having an overview of the whole state, and in fact possibly having pressure from the nation, is more acutely aware of the significance of the housing shortage and probably believes that councils focusing on the local areas may not have that big picture, and that's why they have included instruments like the HDA to ensure that those national and state targets are being met. Now, I also note that historically there has been an imbalance in local jobs in Western and Central Sydney, and I believe that's been rightfully identified. I believe the plan does not clearly identify, however, how this imbalance is going to be addressed or rectified, and I believe rightfully in the response we have identified that. Finally, I also note that the novice precinct has not been identified in the plan as a critical employment anchor within the jobs corridor framework. And I thank the staff for including this fact in our submission. In conclusion, I absolutely support the submission, and I hope that our state government will take note of some of the suggestions in the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Sevraj. Any further speakers? Councillor Uno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise in support of this motion, especially for Council to make a well thought out submission to this strategic paper, Madam Mayor. What we've seen in front of us, it's a start, Madam Mayor. It's good to see that the state government is taking a strategic approach to planning. But, Madam Mayor, the left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing, and vice versa. There's no point, Madam Mayor, in the planning department saying, yes, we want a strategic approach to employment land on one hand, or another department within the same department of another team, being the HDA, Housing Delivery Authority, Madam Mayor, is chewing up our vitally important employment land, Madam Mayor, for residential dwellings. Once it's gone, Madam Mayor. I think from memory, only 2%, Madam Mayor, I think roughly around that, only 2% of the Shire is zoned for employment. And the Hills Council, over multiple councils, over multiple decades, has treated that land with the utmost importance, Madam Mayor. We want people to be able to work, live and play all within the Hills Shire, Madam Mayor. Not send them to North Sydney, to Parramatta or to the CBD, Madam Mayor. We want them to spend less time on the roads, spend more time with their families, and more quality time within the Hills Shire, Madam Mayor. And I hope that this plan before us reins in the Housing Delivery Authority, Madam Mayor, who, as per their priorities, as what Councillor Blue stated, Madam Mayor, on page 26, the other 6 don't matter, Madam Mayor. They've got one priority: housed. That's it. Don't worry about Aboriginal outcomes. Don't worry about prosperous. Don't worry about resilience, being the environment, livable, connected. It's just housed. And you can't plan with only one eye open, Madam Mayor. You have to take a step back and realise that people who are housed also need to go to their places of employment. And so we need the Housing Delivery Authority, the HDA, to pump the brakes, listen to the other key matter experts within the planning department, and ensure that our employment lands are protected. We need to ensure that our current landowners of our employment lands are not eyeing off over their shoulder, Madam Mayor, going, oh, I wonder if I can get this through as a residential development. They need to go in knowing this is employment land, and hence why generally the land cost is cheaper, because it's for jobs, Madam Mayor. And as what Councillor Blue stated on around page 26, Madam Mayor, I believe, in my humble opinion, that when you look at the cascading arrows down, I think that it is really, it's inverse. the most important things needs to be connected. That needs to be the most important priority. That where you work and where that you live, it can be connected. So you're spending less time on the roads and more time with family, Madam Mayor. All are important, but it needs to have the connectivity and coordination first, Madam Mayor. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing the response from that planning department.
Thank you, Councillor Uno. Any further speakers? Councillor Gretzever and then Councillor Hazelden.
Before I talk about this report, I would like to step back and clarify about housing crisis itself for our community. So housing crisis simply means that the number of people who need homes is growing faster than numbers of homes being built. And when what happens, prices going up, rents increase, becomes harder for people to buy or rent a house. Australian housing crisis did not start with the COVID. It is building for more than a decade. Between 2000 and 2020, Australia's population grew rapidly, but housing supply did not always keep pace. Planning systems were very slow, infrastructure often lagged behind the growth, and construction costs increased, and development industry faced the labor shortage. At the same time, investor demand and tax settings such as negative gearing also contributed to rising the prices. During the COVID, interest rates were very low, which pushed housing prices even higher. When international borders reopened after pandemic, population growth surged again and rental demand increased rapidly. That placed additional pressure on already tight housing market. So governments at all levels have tried to respond and resolve this issue. Previous government introduced programs aimed to help buyers enter the market, while current governments have focused more on increasing housing supply through planning reforms and housing targets. In New South Wales, state government had introduced several reforms, including transport-related development policies, lower and mid-rate housing reforms, and housing delivering authority, which have been recommended for many professional bodies, including UDIA, which designed to fast-track state significant housing proposal. Under National Housing Accord, Council with the state also been given housing delivery targets. In the Hill Shire, 23,000 new dwellings supposed to be delivered from 2024 till 2029. To achieve this target, housing completions would need to increase from 2.2 for approximately 4.6 per year, as it is discussed on page 35. However, reality that development market it's not currently delivering homes at that rate. Recent data shows that only around 1,600 dwellings were completed in the hills during first year of the National Accord period. This highlights important point. This is very, very complex issue, and planning approvals alone do not build homes. Housing delivery depends on many factors beyond planning system, including construction cost, labor availability, financing conditions, and market demand. In fact, we already have significant housing capacity. There is zoned capacity in our release areas and along with Sydney Metro Northwest Corridor for more than 47,000 additional dwellings, with further strategic capacity identifying in council long-term planning. This shows that challenge is not simply zoning more land. The challenge is turning existing approvals into complete homes. The documents currently on exhibition are part of state government response to the housing crisis. They aim to reform the planning system and accelerate housing delivery. While intention to simplify planning framework, improve coordinating between housing, jobs, and infrastructure is positive, report before us identify several key issues. First, a proposed framework removal district plans. Second, misproportion of plans and action housing against relative to jobs. And most importantly, finally, we highlight the importance of having of infrastructure. Submission proposed in this report aims strengthen the state government reforms so that the planning system deliver balanced outcome, not just more housing, but well-planned communities where people can live, work, and thrive. For this reason, I support recommendation and endorse the submissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gritzeva. Councillor Hazelden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I support the recommendation in the business paper, Madam Mayor, because I think we have to make a contribution to this important and ongoing debate. I think I simply take issue with the fact that yet again we have this enormous document which is thrown into this mix of urban planning around this as the term I used earlier, this global city we have today. It seems to me, Madam Mayor, that there's now a headlong rush to build dwellings. That's the priority of state government that we're currently facing. We're facing daily massive problem with local transport, whether it's on roads or our increasingly crowded metro, soon to get even worse. We debate constantly the need for sporting field infrastructure, for just infrastructure of all kinds, whether it's hospitals or schools, Madam Mayor. And I guess you could easily argue that with this headlong rush to simply satisfy the housing demand, we're headed for a disaster. I know that this will be maybe some passing interest to Councillor Cox. That as I was listening to the debate, I just happened to Google the state public service workforce, which in 2022 was 434,000 people. 434,000 public servants in the state of New South Wales in 2022. Sorry, Councillor. Excellent. What's more concerning, Madam Mayor, is that in 4 years, it's currently 470,000. So there's this colossal body of public service employees producing yet another document for considerations by the people who have most control over this, which is local government, or who, should I say, who once had most control over this, Madam Mayor. So, Madam Mayor, that's all I have to say on this. I love quoting some statistics which have to be alarming, because that's almost 500,000 people employed by the state, by ratepayers and taxpayers. Sorry, that's only by taxpayers, not ratepayers. Generating yet another document that in the midst of time will just become another paperweight. But I support the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelden. Any further speakers? Councillor Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In going through this report and some of the discussions around the strategy, I was really quite surprised to see this come out as a 20-year plan, but only present a 5-year housing target, without consideration for what the rest of that kind of 15-year period looks like after that, and effectively having a plan for the entire 20-year strategy from what they've essentially outlined here. I was going to read out some of the information on page 202 at the bottom to 203, but Councillor Gritzeva beat me to it. But I will make a particular point about that. With the housing growth expectations in the hills having to increase by 100%, going from 2,270 dwellings per year on average to 4,660 dwellings per year. If we think we're struggling with infrastructure, parks, and obviously the significant opinions that exist about current developments, just wait till everybody sees what's coming. Realistically, this is 23,000 dwellings of an expectation that they're going to be delivered within completions within the next 5 years. That's massive. That's massive. We've got some big problems if this is what's going to be pushed through to have to deliver. Part of the other concern that I have around the push in here is the Housing Delivery Authority and essentially, as already mentioned, their actions in overriding decisions recently made either through council or even through the state government, essentially encouraging developers to go to them despite many years of consultation with council, and pushing development into commercial zones that we have essentially as a council put aside for businesses that have to exist in order to meet the growth targets that we've also been provided. There's been a lot of talk over many years about being able to work where you live. If we're taking away commercial businesses from these particular locations, we're taking away the opportunity for people to actually be able to do that, which then forces them onto infrastructure that hasn't kept up to pace, which forces them onto the metro, which forces them into other hubs that are already struggling to be able to handle this. I do acknowledge Councillor Uno's comments around at least having a strategy or the state government making efforts to put something in front of us. I think it's once again going to be left up to us as a council to pick up the pieces and try and do our best. But I am extremely concerned, as I have been with Box Hill for a very long time, that despite us holding the bag, there's no money in it to be able to pay for anything. I am very concerned about ultimately what's proposed. I'm very appreciative of the staff putting together such a comprehensive response in these draft submissions. I hope that they are considered. I hope that they are given the respect that they deserve, and I hope that they're seen as not something that is not wanting to contribute to housing within New South Wales, but to be able to contribute to it appropriately. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Any further speakers? No further speakers. Councillor Blue, your right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I appreciate all of the comments put forward, and I want to make it clear that I certainly appreciate that the government are trying to do something here, and I think that's to be acknowledged. However, we do need to make sure we get this right, and we as a council are best placed to make the decisions on behalf of our community than the state government are. Their job is to put forward the strategy, the policy, and then we can implement that based on what's best for our community. But I just want to read a couple of points out of the business paper, and I hate reading from the business paper, but I think this really just sums up exactly what it is. While there is some good theoretical content within the documents, there is a problematic disconnect between this well-founded theory and a tangible or enforceable implementation mechanism and action. The tangible implementation actions appear to be overwhelmingly focused on housing, with inadequate regard or weight given to other priorities within the draft plan, such as jobs, employment, infrastructure and the environment, or any real long-term strategic planning or direction beyond the current housing crisis. The draft Sydney plan does not include any real vision or description of what Sydney or New South Wales will be like in the future, and this, combined with the removal of the district level plan from the planning hierarchy, will make it extremely difficult for residents to complete long-term strategic planning or work towards the objectives of the draft Sydney plan with any real transparency, consistency or certainty. Overall, despite some of the sound theoretical underpinnings, it appears that the framework and actions are being set up to be vague and flexible enough to permit government to change policy settings without any real checks, balances or oversight. In contrast to the current system, the documents represent a reduction in clear and consistent direction and will likely lead to increased uncertainty and ad hoc decisions making within the planning system. Madam Mayor, we need to be clear where we're heading with this. We can't have an opportunity for a disconnect between what strategy might be one day and what a planning instrument might be the next. We need a clear system moving forward so decisions can be made with certainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blue. On item 2, New South Wales Government Exhibition and Your Approach to Strategic Plan Discussion Paper, Statewide Policy for Industrial Lands and Draft Sydney Plan. Got a motion moved by Councillor Blue, seconded by Councillor Uno. The recommendation contained in the report be adopted. Councillors, it is a planning matter, so if you could vote on your keypads, please. All votes are in. That motion is carried, but for the tape recording and proceedings tonight's meeting, I'll read out the names of those who voted for and against. Voting for the motion, Councillor Blue, Councillor Cox, Councillor Casby, Councillor Gretziva, Councillor Hazelden, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Jetty, Councillor Severage, Councillor Uno and myself, Mayor Dr Byrne. Voting against that motion was Councillor Cartwright.
Madam Mayor, point of order.
Yes.
And forgive me, but I thought that for planning matters, if you were going to be voting against it, you need to actually have spoken on the planning matter, as per the new code of meeting conduct.
Individual or whole council?
No, through you, Madam Mayor. You don't need to speak for and against any item, you only need to vote. But if the council is resolving different to the staff recommendation, reasons have to be given.
Thank you. We move to call the agenda. Councillors, I'll read out each item one by one. If you wish to speak to the motion or vote against, please flag it with me. Item 3, Hawkesbury and Nepean River Management, Councillor Blue. Item 4, Revised Privacy Management Plan. Item 5, Property Acquisition Matter, Lot 41 DP 1252816-4 Old Northern Road, Castle Hill Road, Castle Hill. Councillor Uno, thank you. Item 6, Proposed Easement for Drainage, Lot 101 DP 10157-16 Hines Road, Box Hill. No takers. And item 7, Property Dealings relating to development matters. Councillors, can I have a motion to move item 4, item 6 and item 7 on Globo? Moved by Councillor Cox, seconded by Councillor Jetty. Is there any debate? No debate. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. All those against. Thank you, councillors. The recommendations in the business papers for item 4, 6 and 7 are now the resolutions of this council. We go back to item 3, Hawkesbury Nepean River Management, Councillor Blue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as per the business
Moving the
paper.
recommendation has been in the business paper. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jackson, thank you. Councillor Blue, you wish to speak to your motion?
Madam Mayor, I'm incredibly proud to move this motion this evening, as this is a fantastic step in the right direction. I've been working alongside the Upper Hawkesbury Nepean River Users Group for a number of years now. And as I've spoken before in this chamber, in March of 2025, I attended a community meeting with Councillor Jackson, Councillor Casby, and a number of councillors and staff from our council and Hawkesbury and Hornsby. Following that, there was a meeting held which was very clear in its objective that we needed to do more as a council. We needed to advocate and we needed to push the state government into doing something more broadly, but also more coordinated for the Hawkesbury Nepean River system. Madam Mayor, it's very clear to me and our community just what this river delivers. It's not only a place where people swim, it's a place where people fish, people eat, people drink, people, and I'll refer to what Councillor Jackson said last meeting. I won't say that we dump our waste into the river, but it is a mechanism for taking treated effluent from a treatment plant to the ocean. But that can't be confused with that does not have an impact. We're seeing considerable changes in this river. We're seeing prawns spawning at a different time. We're seeing them grow to a different size. We're seeing mangroves grow in areas that they haven't before. We're seeing mangroves die in areas that they've been for hundreds of years. Something is changing in this river. And it is time that someone does something about it before we don't have a river that is as it currently is. Madam Mayor, a coordinated approach needs to be put forward. We look at page 237 of the business paper, and there's a fantastic table there which outlines 14 different government agencies, 14 different agencies which all have a part to play in this river. Now, I can guarantee when an issue happens and something goes wrong, all of those agencies duck for cover and they all come back to council. I recently spoke to the River Users Group the other day who had a meeting with Maritime New South Wales about areas of the river which are almost non-navigable and they need to be dredged to provide a safe passage. And guess what the outcome was? Oh, you'll have to talk to council about that. Well, no. The time has come for us as a council to say, no, we are not the responsible agency here. We play a part, I agree, but there's 13 others that play a part in this that have to be held accountable for what they are legislative to provide. Things such as when we have a flood, the water comes up as a flood does and it breaches the bank of the river and it continues into properties. Once it does that, whose responsibility is it? Who's responsible for disaster recovery? Who's responsible for cleaning up the river? Madam Mayor, a boat hit an object in the Hawkesbury River last week, and it turned out that it is a steel water tank that is 5 metres diameter, about 10 metres long, and it has been sitting on the bank of that river since the last flood. No one wanted to do anything about it. It's now dislodged, stuck in the middle of the river, and it's now a $250,000 recovery effort just to get this tank out because someone didn't want to do it earlier. Boat was damaged, could have been a significant accident, and now we've got an environmental issue with a tank stuck in the middle of the river. It is not good enough for these agencies to keep throwing the responsibility back to somebody else. There needs to be a coordinated approach here where someone will be at the top and say, you're the agency responsible, get on and fix it. I'm sick of the blame game being shifted around. If we don't get on top of this soon, we're going to have significant problems. The Hawkesbury Nepean Coastal Management Plan is a fantastic mechanism that's been put in place. However, it does not go far enough. It is not guaranteed into the future based on the funding mechanisms, but it also doesn't cover this whole approach. The Hawkesbury Nepean River starts in Goulburn. The catchment, starts in Goulburn. This is so much more than just our council. This is so much more than our 5 neighbouring councils. Council all along that play a role, but we have to be coordinated in what we do here. Thank you to the General Manager for putting this report together, and I'm so pleased to see this. This is exactly what I was after. I think that moving forward, we're in a much better position now to advocate to those that need to hear it. And I, for one, am not going to stop until we get an outcome here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blue. Councillor Hazelden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I think the most telling comment in support of what Councillor Blue has just been saying is on the first item in recommendation 1, that Council support a single authority being established to articulate and monitor the strategic objectives of the Hawkesbury Nepean River system. Madam Mayor, history, as we've talked about tonight, is a great backdrop for all of us. It carries on inexorably, and in the midst of time, things are lost. If we harken back to the difficulties in putting the light rail in George Street, one of the obstacles to that was the fact that the contractors had no idea when they put a shovel in the ground what they were going to find, and there was no single agency that could tell what was happening. The result of that was a $2 billion or more cost blowout. Fortunately, we have a fantastic public transport system as a result. Another parallel, Madam Mayor, is that of the Parramatta River, where the Parramatta River Catchment Group was formed, of which fortunately I was a council representative at the time. That had similar lofty goals. People recognised that over the passage of a couple of 100 years, nobody knew really what was going on and into that river. So the Parramatta River Catchment Group was formed, and in that particular situation it turned out that Sydney Water was the body with the most knowledge that could articulate what the issues were. We now have the situation where sections of the Parramatta River at certain times of the year are swimmable, particularly down the lower reaches. I think that the intent of this motion is absolutely laudable. There is the Hawkesbury Nepean is one of the great river systems of Australia. River systems as arteries of any community are just so important to look after. And unless there is a coordinating authority, this plethora of government agencies that we list on page 227 will continue to just argue and deflect from each other. So, Madam Mayor, as this moves forward, my only hope is that of the 470,000 state public servants that we have in the state right now, that this doesn't give rise to even more state public servants. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelden. Any further speakers? Councillor Casby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I agree with both Councillor Blue and Councillor Hazelden. I agree with all of these 4 recommendations. It's really wonderful to see Council advocating for the Hawkesbury River, looking into the future, preparing for the increased pressures and the challenges that we all know are coming. Every dollar that we spend in preparedness saves $3 to $10, I believe is the number, in trying to repair damage after the fact, after the damage occurs. So I really commend this direction we're moving in. We all want good water quality, whether it's for environmental health, to uphold the deep cultural significance of First Nations people, for fishing and food production, for recreation and enjoyment, for economic and industry services. But as has been already said tonight, there are gaps. And as we can see here in this report, where it points out that the Hawkesbury Nepean Catchment Management Plan only applies to land within 100 to 500 metre buffer of the Hawkesbury River foreshore, and actions outside this buffer zone, so issues occurring upstream or with flooding or disaster relief, are out of its remit. So it's really clear that we need a more holistic approach. The Hawkesbury River needs good governance and ideally one central governing body to achieve effective coordination and management. And at the moment, people don't know who to contact if there are issues. So if we had a central body with their contact details online, it would be easy for everyone to find and know who to address these issues with. So I also really commend Council on being proactive and bringing this motion to Council chambers tonight. Thank you to councillors, particularly Councillor Blue and also Councillor Jackson, our General Manager and staff, who I'm sure there's many of you who have been working hard to see this come to Council to further progress these actions. Perhaps one day we could even consider giving our mighty Hawkesbury River some legal rights. Rights for nature are starting to be recognised all over the world, and I would really welcome this path forward to safeguard the health and existence of our life-giving natural planet, especially when it's under our custodianship and it's in our backyard. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Casby. Any further speakers? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just before I kick off, actually no, I'll do it at the end. I was looking through this report, and obviously the mayoral minute that you put up, Madam Mayor, bringing this to our attention, and also the movement of this consideration to local government, New South Wales and a number of other areas, noting that it does impact such a significant geographical area, as already described by Councillor Blue, of reaching all the way to Goulburn. I have contemplated quite a bit the historical governance structures as outlined in the report on page 236. We did have an office of the Hawkesbury Nepean. Unfortunately, that was closed. We did have a small number of public servants, Councillor Hazelden supporting that at the time. From what I can tell, the belief of the government at the time that it wasn't a perfect solution, but looking at what's already been described on page 237, surely these 14 different groups, including what it says here on number 9 as a local council, is not a better option than having a dedicated authority, as described of what was put together for Parramatta, to be able to look after the Hawkesbury River for, as Councillor Casby says, for what's coming also in the future, but also the impacts currently. Councillor Blue talked about the barrel, I think it was, that had gone into the water, and now $250,000. Somebody's going to have to pay that, and no matter where it comes from out of all of these agencies, it's going to be the taxpayer or the ratepayer that's going to bear the cost, an unnecessary cost. One story that Councillor Blue told me a number of months ago was about a tree that 12 months ago from now had fallen into the river, and nobody on this list could work out whose responsibility it was to clear it. And just so everybody knows, that tree is still lying in the river, and a resolution still hasn't come to who's going to take responsibility of sorting that out. I hope it doesn't create an injury or damage to anything or anyone in that river. But surely what's proposed here tonight in looking at a single authority, a standalone statutory authority that can look at coordinating all of those services and having a statutory responsibility to getting outcomes on the river, surely in comparison to what we have at the moment, that is a better option. Madam Mayor, I know that there's been discussion about what to do with the Hawkesbury River from a number of different councils. knowing, as indicated earlier, that it does impact such a large geographical catchment area, I was wondering if we could add an extra point as point 5 in the recommendation, that we send a copy of this report to each of the councils that sit within that Hawkesbury catchment area, seeking their support for our communication to government. It's already indicated in the paper that, in the business paper on page 242, that it would likely get broad support at a local level, especially from councils with river boundaries and crossings. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to take a bit of leadership.
Councillor Blue, you're happy to include that in your motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
That's all from me, Madam Mayor. I'm just proud that we can stand up here, even as a united North Ward team, in being able to support this motion. And I really do hope that the state government takes it seriously, and that with the support from us and all of the other impacted councils, we'd be able to achieve an outcome for the river. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Any further speakers? No further speakers. Councillor Blue, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to councillors who've supported the motion this evening. Madam Mayor, I just want to talk briefly about the Upper Hawkesbury River Users Group and what they've tried to achieve as a volunteer committee of over 45 years, with a great interest in the Hawkesbury and Nepean River system. As I've mentioned before in this chamber and mentioned in this report, this group convened a meeting in March last year, and they did the legwork to get a lot of these agencies in a room. Now, the meeting didn't start off fantastic. A lot of the agencies said, well, you're lucky we're here for one meeting, we're not doing it again, so ask your questions and probably don't want to hear from you again. It was very disappointing to start off like that, and it was even more disappointing to end with even more questions than what we went into the room with. And the biggest question for me was, well, everyone here is doing fantastic work. Well, they say they're doing fantastic work. But there's no evidence to prove it, there's no data that can be given, and there's no one coordinating the work. So there's duplication, there's triplication, and there's competing priorities, competing strategies. So for a group of about 10 people who started this over 45 years ago, who are still on this process all that time later, to pull off a meeting like that and still have the tenacity to keep going, I think that's fantastic. They're a volunteer group. They're no different to, you could almost put them down as they're like a progress association, if you like. They don't have a lot of pull with these agencies, and that's why they're begging for our help to do what we can. And here is the Hills, as we often say. We are the lead council, and I'm proud to be a part of the council that is leading this, because the other councils, a lot of them all said they're willing to support and help, but at the end of the day, we're the ones that have pulled this together. Something that needs to be considered here, and it's topical at the moment as we talk about our housing crisis, is that for every house that you put into the I won't say floodplain, but if every house you put into the catchment, it all adds up and has a cumulative effect over this river. And if it's not considered, it's not managed, it's not dealt with, it's more stress and strain put onto this river every day. You see the massive population or dwelling increase in Box Hill, for example. Box Hill, all the water from Box Hill ends up in the river. You look at the areas over in Riverston, where the state government are proposing to build in a floodplain on wetlands, for example. That has an impact. We look at, and I refer to a site visit that Councillor Casby and I did some time ago to Blundell's Swamp. We look at the impact that has on the swamp, which is part of the river. We look at Cat-Eye Creek, for example, and we see a wonderful platypus that we have in Cat-Eye Creek. Cat-Eye Creek runs into the Hawkesbury River. Every part of our Shire, all of the water ends up in the Hawkesbury River. You have to consider that. And it'd be such a tragedy if we as a council didn't do anything about this. And so I'm so glad that we are. And if there's one thing that I can achieve this term of council, is the continued advocacy and to get this across the line with the state government. And I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. It's going to be hard. Trying to get a state government any persuasion to implement some form of community-driven agency, authority, organisation, call it what you wish, trying to get that implemented is not going to be easy. But if we are united as a council, and we are united as councils across the district as a whole, I think we can do this. But we need to keep the pressure on, and this conversation starts tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blue. We're on item 3, Hawkesbury Nepean River Management. Got a motion moved by Councillor Blue and seconded by Councillor Jackson. The recommendation contained in the report be adopted, plus the additional 0.5. Council send a copy of this report to each council within the catchment area seeking their support for our motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 5, property acquisition matter lot 41 DP 1252816 for Old Northern Road. Sorry, for Old Castle Hill Road, Castle Hill. Councillor Uno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as stated in the...
Thank you. Councillor Hazelden's happy to second. Councillor Uno, you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm proud to be on a council with such strategic foresight, Madam Mayor. We don't just look in terms of a political term being the current 4 years, but we take a more long-term view, Madam Mayor, and in this I think that we're taking a 40-year term view. This proposed acquisition on the pretty much right opposite Castle Towers, Madam Mayor, is such of strategic importance. You can see as articulated in image 3, Madam Mayor, on page 300, it's one of 3 critical parcels of land which will allow for the future Arthur Whitling Reserve to be expanded from what it appears today as a pocket park, Madam Mayor, to something with better, greater significance and grandeur, more in keeping and in fitting with this centre of this Shire, Madam Mayor, and also in Eastwood as well, Madam Mayor. May I put? Madam Mayor, you can see on page 298 an artist's impression as to what the future of Arthur Whitling Reserve could basically look like, Madam Mayor. And it was thanks to your mayoral minute earlier today that most of the councillors supported, Madam Mayor, that we learnt, and I think more so for anyone that may be at home watching, Madam Mayor, or within the gallery, who Arthur Whitling was, one of the early presidents of this great Shire, Madam Mayor. And to see us investing in the future with all the development that is proposed around Castle Towers and Castle Hill, that we are thinking towards green space, Madam Mayor. We're ensuring that people have a passive, peaceful place to escape the hustle and bustle of their daily lives, Madam Mayor, and I look forward to us making future investments like this in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Uno. Any further speakers? No further speakers. Got a motion moved by Councillor Uno, seconded by Councillor Hazelden, that recommendation contained in the report for item 5 be adopted. All those in favour say aye. Aye. As against, is carried. Thank you, councillors. Close the meeting 8:48. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, council officers. Thank you, members of the public, for being here with us this evening. Good night.